Partisan Politics. Trade and Western Expansion. Shortly after George Washington was inaugurated in 1789, the French Revolution began in Europe. At first, most Americans sympathized with the revolutionaries, who seemed to be fighting for the same rights Americans had won a few years earlier. By the spring of 1793, however, a new group of French radicals, those whose political views and practices were considered extreme, had seized control. They executed thousands of people, including the king and queen. Many Federalists, shocked by the violence and chaos, opposed the French revolutionaries. Despite the bloodshed, many Republicans supported the revolutionaries because they seemed to be fighting for liberty. When France declared war on Britain, President Washington found himself in a difficult position. The United States traded with both Britain and France, yet the Treaty of 1778 with France required the United States to help defend France's colonies in the Caribbean. Washington wanted the United States to remain neutral, not aligning with either side. In April 1793, Washington declared the United States to be friendly and impartial toward both warring powers. Jay's Treaty and Pinckney's Treaty. Despite Washington's declaration, the British began intercepting all ships carrying goods to French ports, including hundreds of American ships. At the same time, reports appeared that the British, operating out of forts they still occupied on American territory, were encouraging their Native American allies to attack Western settlers. Together, these events pushed Congress to the brink of war in 1794. Determined to avoid war, Washington sent John Jay to Britain to seek a solution. Britain agreed to a treaty but drove a hard bargain. Jay was forced to agree that Britain had the right to seize cargoes bound for French ports. The British then agreed to give up their forts on American territory and granted the United States most favored nation status. Republicans attacked the treaty, accusing the Federalists of being pro-British. Washington reluctantly signed the treaty, avoided war, and protected the fragile American economy. Jay's treaty helped the United States win concessions from Spain, which still controlled Florida and territory west of the Mississippi River. In 1795, Spain joined France in its war against Britain. Fearing that the United States would join forces with Britain to seize Spain's North American holdings, Spain offered to negotiate all outstanding issues with the United States. In 1795, the Spanish signed the Treaty of San Lorenzo, or Pinckney's Treaty, granting the United States the right to navigate the Mississippi and deposit goods at New Orleans. Westward expansion. In the 1780s, Americans began to settle in the area between the Appalachians and the Mississippi River. A Native American chief of the Miami, named Little Turtle, led Native Americans' resistance to American settlement in the region. In late 1790 and again in 1791, Little Turtle's forces defeated the U.S. troops. After these defeats, Washington sent General Anthony Wayne to stop the Native American attacks. In August 1794, Wayne's forces defeated the Native American forces, led by the Shawnee chief Blue Jacket at the Battle of Fallen Timbers. Wayne's victory dealt a decisive blow to Native American resistance in the Northwest Territory. In August 1795, 12 Native American nations signed the Treaty of Greenville. They agreed to give up part of southern Ohio and Indiana in exchange for a yearly payment of $9,500 from the federal government. After the treaty was signed, the flow of settlers to the region rapidly increased. By 1803, Ohio had enough settlers to become a state. The war between the parties. When Washington decided in 1796 to step down as president after 2 terms, the United States held its first openly contested election. The Federalists rallied around John Adams for president, while the Republicans nominated Thomas Jefferson. John Adams edged out Jefferson 71 to 68 in the Electoral College and became the second president of the United States. The Quasi-War with France. Enraged by Jay's Treaty, the French began seizing goods from American ships headed to Britain. France's actions led many Federalists to call for war. Adams sent Charles Pinckney, Elbridge Gerry, and John Marshall to Paris to negotiate with the French government. After weeks of waiting, 3 agents of the French government approached the Americans and asked for a bribe of $250,000 and a loan of $12 million, just to start talks. John Marshall later recalled the demand for a bribe. Mr. X again returned to the subject of money. Said he, "Gentlemen, it is expected that you will offer money. What is your answer?" We replied, "It is no, not a sixpence." This inspired the Federalist slogan, "Millions for defense, but not 1 cent for tribute." When President Adams informed Congress, he referred to the French agents as X, Y, and Z. Newspapers referred to the incident as the XYZ affair. Irate Americans called for war. In June 1798, Congress suspended trade with France. The 2 nations were soon fighting an undeclared war at sea, known as the Quasi-War. Eventually, the 2 countries signed the Convention of 1800, which released the United States from the Treaty of 1778 and brought the Quasi-War to an end. The Alien and Sedition Acts. In the height of public anger at France in 1798, the Federalists pushed 4 laws through Congress, known as the Alien and Sedition Acts. The first 3 laws were aimed at aliens, people living in the country who were not citizens. The first extended the number of years that immigrants had to wait before they could become citizens from 5 to 14 years. The next 2 laws gave the president the power to deport without trial any alien deemed dangerous to the nation. The 4th law tried to prevent sedition or incitement to rebellion. This law made it illegal to criticize the federal government or any government official, depriving citizens of their basic right to free speech. In 1798 and 1799, the Republican-controlled legislatures of Kentucky and Virginia passed resolutions, anonymously written by Jefferson and Madison, that criticized the Alien and Sedition Acts. The Virginia resolutions introduced a theory of interposition. They argued that if the federal government did something unconstitutional, the state could interpose between the federal government and the people and stop the illegal action. The Kentucky resolutions advanced the theory of nullification. According to this theory, if the federal government passed an unconstitutional law, the states had the right to nullify the law or declare it invalid. The election of 1800s. John Adams faced a tough battle for re-election in 1800s. The Alien and Sedition Act had angered many people, as had new taxes on houses, land, and enslaved people. The Republican nominees, Thomas Jefferson for president and Aaron Burr for vice president, opposed the taxes and the National Bank. The election revealed a flaw in the system for selecting the president. The Constitution does not let citizens choose presidents directly. Each state chooses electors, the same number as it has senators and representatives. This group, known as the Electoral College, then votes for the president. Under the original terms of the Constitution, each elector in the Electoral College voted for two people, normally one for the presidential candidate and another for their vice presidential candidate. To avoid a tie between Jefferson and Burr, the Republicans intended for one elector to refrain from voting for Burr. But when the votes were counted, Jefferson and Burr each had 73 votes. Since no candidate had a majority, the Federalist-controlled House of Representatives had to choose the president. Many Federalists despised Jefferson, but Alexander Hamilton convinced his followers to support Jefferson. In February 1801, one Federalist cast a blank ballot so that Jefferson received more votes than Burr and became president. The election of 1800 was an important turning point in American history. At the time, the Federalists controlled the Army, the presidency, and Congress. They could have refused to step down and overthrown the Constitution. Instead, they respected the people's right to choose the president. The election of 1800 demonstrated that power in the United States could be peacefully transferred despite strong disagreements between the parties.